Hello and welcome to the Turn Zero podcast. We are the Snapkeep crew, and this is the show before the show where we talk about Magic the Gathering. Mostly Commander.
Yeah.
I'm Al, and as always, I am joined by
Jake,
Alex,
and Ryan.
And today we are going to be talking about our individual Commander philosophies. So how we build our decks, particularly how we select a Commander, how do we build the deck itself, and then how do we have fun with it? Alex is going to start us off and kind of give us the first pitch of how do you select a Commander?
Oh, Lord.
So it's funny that I lead this discussion because I have hundreds of deck lists online.
Yep.
And the most paper decks of all of us,
Yes.
if not as many as the three of you combined. Because I just enjoy building Commander decks.
Yeah.
A lot of my decks initially were built based on just, I don't have this color pairing. A lot of my decks are built off of the random Commander button that you can find on EDH. Right?
I believe that.
I just click it, and
Yeah.
I'm like, that sounds interesting. I'll make a list for that. And then from there, if I like the list, then it becomes paper. And sometimes I'm looking for a mechanic that I want to try out that I think, maybe I'd enjoy this. And then that becomes, okay, like what's a good commander that fits this mechanic? Okay, let's build that. And sometimes that leads to me having a lot of Rakdos decks, or me having quite a few Naya decks. But a lot of it is just kind of, so sometimes it's even finding a card. I mean, like, oh, this is a cool commander. I can already sort of picture a list for this, which is actually with the upcoming Aether Drift set, where I'm at with Vinwixt, is I saw the commander and was like, oh, like I already have ideas for how I would build this deck list.
Yeah.
And then just started putting together a deck list.
Yeah, something that's really interesting when I think about how you build is, I think we're very opposite. Like my funnel in the beginning is like, okay, these are all the commanders, immediately bottlenecked.
For sure.
If I make a list, like I'm probably building it.
Yeah.
Whereas you, like I feel like the funnel is just like a constant, it slowly goes
It's a
down.
silo.
Yeah, more of a straight up and down.
I probably put together a deck. I probably make out a deck list every 2 weeks, whether or not it becomes paper.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just because this card is interesting, because I found a card that's part of the 99 that I thought was interesting, and just kind of tossed together a deck list as like, this would be a cool concept. And most of them do not come to fruition, but they definitely could.
What's a deal breaker for a commander? If you're looking through what's a commander, you're like, no, not building that.
I think heavy stacks is something like, I've had a lot of really good ideas for like a Grand Augustine deck, but I'm never going to build a Grand Augustine deck.
Yeah.
Or I try to stay away from Eminence. Like at one point I'd put together an Edgar Markov list. Or if a commander I think feels too streamlined,
Fair.
then it's just like, okay, this deck fills too much of itself out. There's no kind of creative influence.
Like would you say like an Urza, Lord High Artificer sort of thing, or kind of
I
like
think
a
interesting enough, being now that I have built a Lathril deck, or Light Paws. I had Light Paws, put together a list for Light Paws, played it like twice. It went the exact same both times, and I was like, this is boring. It's just too one-dimensional in the fact that it does the exact same thing every time, and that just...
Yeah. It's one of those decks where it shares the same line every sort of game.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the opposite, but yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, like when I think about how you build decks, it's like the filtering process is building the deck list.
Yeah.
Like if you have an idea, you'll build a deck list, and then if you like it, you'll run with it. Which is interesting.
Yeah.
All right, what about you, Ryan? How do you select a commander?
If it is 2 or less colors.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. I have been branching out into 3-color recently, but mainly if I want to build a commander deck, I look through my bulk or my binder, and I just like flip through my pages of like, and I'm like, this legendary creature is cool, or that legendary creature is cool, and now I'm kind of getting to the point where I like certain things, so I like building around them. Like for instance, Errant and Giada can allow you to look at the top card of your library. And I was like, I really like that because it's like having an extra card in your hand. So I looked through my binder to see if there's anything like that in a color pair I've never done. And I saw Falco Spara, the Pact Weaver, that kind of has the same sort of thing, but it's more of a counters based deck, not flash flying. So I was like, well, maybe I build that. You know, kind of like puts me out of my comfort zone with 3-color, and also is kind of like a game plan I've never done before with like counter synergy. You know, I've done like the tokens and the flash flying and the typal types, but I've never really done like counters.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's interesting because I never look through my collection.
Oh, really?
So like
Really?
starting by like looking through your binders
Well,
is
that's
interesting.
the first thing I do. I always look
yeah.
to see what I have, and then I like, that's a secret layer Olivia Voldaren, or like, that's a secret layer like this card or that legendary creature. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna look for that, and then I have no staples, so I'm like, okay, next.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I think something that's actually kind of interesting about our group is that you and Jake, I think, often are like, I built this commander particularly because I think it's cool in some way. Usually you're like a character and you're like a mechanic or an interaction. And I think Alex and I are a little bit more like on the website, you know, like kind of thinking like, oh, this is cool. You know, I had this idea for this build in a different way.
Like the gameplay loop is cool.
Yeah.
You know. And I like that one-dimensional sort of thing. Yawgmoth, very one-dimensional.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of my like top 2 favorite decks is
There are actual play lines.
Yeah, ends the same way 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
So there's also I like to do that sort of like one-dimensional, be as streamlined as possible.
Yeah. And along those lines, you're also the heaviest combo player.
Yes, I do
In
like
our
my
pod.
combo. Yeah.
I was actually going to ask, does it matter to you if a commander like has a combo?
It doesn't matter, but I do see a commander that has a combo that can enable it, and I'm like, you
So
know?
it makes it more interesting.
It does make it interesting
Yeah.
to see how the combo works, and 2, if it is like feasible.
Sure.
You know.
Cool. Yeah,
It's a
so
Yu-Gi-Oh player in you.
Don't even play. I've never played Yu-Gi-Oh.
yeah, he plays One Piece. Get it
I
right.
play One
Yeah,
Piece.
for real.
Yeah, so I'll go next. So when I think about how I select a commander, I kind of go by one principle in my mind, but I don't know if it's actually true as I look at my commander deck.
But before you say, is it whatever secret layer is on sale?
Are you sure?
But the secret layers do be cool.
yeah.
I feel like in the most succinct way to put it is like, does this commander spark joy?
Oh, the Marie Kondo.
The Marie Kondo
Yeah.
method.
Yeah.
Is like, if there's not something like in my stomach that's like very exciting to me, whether it be like unique in a very particular way, like I'm very well known in our pod for doing like gimmick based decks, like
Oh yeah.
this commander dice rolls, or it brings in attractions,
Flips coins.
flips coins, right? Like
Goads, you know.
So what's interesting about you saying that is you said that you're not sure that it is that way looking at your deck lists.
so yeah.
So do you have decks that don't spark joy?
no.
Is that what we're getting
Does Cranko
at?
not spark joy anymore?
I think it's not as pure as that, as much as it is. I think I know what sparks joy for me.
Oh,
a lot of the
sure.
times, it's like if it has a unique play pattern, or 2, and I'm about to out myself pretty heavily, is if it has card advantage.
Does the commander say draw a card? Then it's in.
Can I run reality shift?
I looked through all 15 of my paper decks.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna list all the ones that say card advantage on the
Oh my
commander.
God.
Or some sort of card advantage on them.
Will Help the Rock Cleaver, Prosper Tomebound,
Yep.
Paco Haldon, Locust God, Sidar Jabari, Nelly Borka, Nine Fingers Keen, Okan and Zindersplit, Kozla, Tesa, Opulent Oligarch. That's like 10?
Yeah,
Yep.
so far we're at 10 out of 15.
10 out of 15, and there might be more, but
Did you
those are
mention
like...
Paco and Haldon?
Yeah,
I did,
yeah.
yeah.
That's not your cards. It is other people's.
It's
Still
our
card
cards,
advantage, though.
Yeah, so like I think something that just sparks joy is card advantage.
Yeah.
And which makes a lot of sense from my roots. Like when I first started the game, my favorite color combo was Simic, and then I moved to Izzet as my favorite color combination, and that's because I like drawing cards. I like touching as much cardboard as possible, not in a tokens way, unless they're like artifact tokens, but just card draw,
tapping your
and
tchotchkes.
just, yeah, like
Or you just
Game
are the blue
actions.
player. You went from Simic to Izzet, and what's in common? Blue.
Blue.
yeah, I guess so.
Like I said, can I run reality shift?
Best 3 words in the game. Draw a card. So
Yeah, that's pretty good, yeah.
Amen. So that's really how I select a commander. I look at the new set, I looked at some, older cards, and if it's something that like is unique, exciting, it has card advantage, like it's probably on my list for builds. And we'll get to building the deck next. But first, we got to hit Jake.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I look to build a commander, like you said, I do look for mechanics. I think the 99 is honestly more important to me than the commander itself. When I'm looking to build a deck, I'm like, I want to build a dredge deck, or I want to build, a deck that cares about goad or has combo lines in it. And I shop for a commander that fits, cards that I would want to play. So, like, Aranis, my landfall dredge deck, started out as Sidisi. It was a Sultai Sidisi list to make zombies, and then I toyed around with the Slogurk list for a little bit because he seemed fun and I like oozes, but then landed on Aranis, and that process took like 6 months. So, like, picking a commander for me is a lot about finding the pet cards in the 99 that I care about, and then making sure that its play pattern, isn't oppressive, and also that its play pattern is different from the other decks that I own. I think that part's also really important to me.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you said like the 99 is sometimes more important than the commander. I'm the opposite, where I prioritize the commander over everything and build around it.
Sure.
Because I like that Vorthos, that like how the commander is the leader of the army. You know what I mean? And I understand where you're coming from. That like I want a well-oiled machine with someone who's the best at the helm. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I was actually really happy when the Commander Legends Baldur's Gate came out, because I really like the background mechanic. I think it's really good. Ryan, you might not think so, but I think those in particular, when I can take, one piece and another piece and, fit it to a mechanic that I really enjoy, like a polymorph deck or a dredge deck, like that makes me very happy. And to get me to build a deck like that doesn't take very much. It's like,
good.
Aranis, just +1 to all of my dredges and some card selection. That's it. That's all I need.
Yeah.
Other than that, commanders that do cool stuff, pretty fun.
Yeah.
Like I like Zeatora because she's a fling deck. Did I need another John deck? Probably not. But
I think it was interesting, like mentioning the does it do something oppressive and like skipping over it, because something that I don't think we've talked about on the channel at all is that there are mechanics that we avoid.
Yeah. So with that, I was going to build, I think we talked about this, I was going to build a Carmen Cruel Sky Marcher deck. Boy, she really likes the 3-mana everybody sacks a creatures. And playing Edict deck was not something that I was really interested in, even though I think Carmen is a really cool card. It's like, I saw that play pattern was probably the most powerful, where you reanimate a Fleshbag Marauder every turn, and I was like, I don't want this.
Every turn,
Every turn.
No, I think that's really interesting, because you do have a Nath deck, which could easily be a very like heavy discard, heavy oppressive deck, but I think you did a good job at striking the balance, because like, yes, I am discarding, but my opponents aren't always going to be hellbent when they're playing against it.
But then there's this ball of elves running at you.
Yeah. It's got a very heavy swing towards the elf side, which I think was a very smart way to like build an honestly like very scary play pattern. Like people hate Turgid, people hate Tiny Bones or whatever,
None of us would have a Turgid deck.
The Turgrids, the Shieldrids, the Tiny Bones.
I definitely wouldn't have built a Shieldred deck either.
Whispering one, not Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's go to our second question then, is how do you build the actual 99, the deck itself, Alex?
So most of my decks end up the same way, with me looking through bulk for cards when I'm actually putting it into paper. But a wealthy majority of my deck lists start with me either searching Scryfall for keywords, searching EDHREC for kind of most recommended cards, or me just kind of randomly coming across cards that I think would fit a deck list. So I try to put together only 100 cards first. Sometimes I have 300 cards and I have to narrow it down a lot, and those take a very long time. But for the most part, I end up being 115, 120, make a couple cuts, get down to the 100, and then as I start putting it in paper, I'm looking through my bulk for what cards I already have for the 99, and then because I'm looking through bulk, oh, this card would go really good in this deck, or this card would go really good in this other deck that I have, or this other list that I'm like sort of thinking about.
The amount of times I've heard, do you think this card goes in this deck? I'm like,
Yeah.
what does it do?
I do make changes to my decks more than anyone else in this room. I probably change a deck every single time I play it. And I play the deck and I think either 1 or 2 cards is going to change, or this deck really needs more card draw. Where can I add that in? What's necessary to this deck? That kind of deal. But when I do have deck lists that I've built entirely out of my bulk. Like my mono green partners, Kodama and Halana, is entirely out of bulk, just because I had a lot of green cards sitting on my desk. For the longest time, it ran a command tower because I didn't have enough forests on my deck.
In mono green.
But there was a command tower, and so I was just like, okay, it's making the list. And
You have to add green
kind
in.
of add it in there. But most of my deck building technique is either finding cool kind of unique cards that fit the synergy. I think I run some of the older cards in our play group just because they might not be as good, but because they're older, one, they're a little bit less expensive, but they're also kind of cooler, a little bit more unique interactions within the game. And I like a lot of old Magic arts. I just think they're neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually really cool to hear you talk about that, because I think something that I've noticed is, we all got into the game at a different time.
Yeah.
And I think
Actually, each one a
you were the
different time.
newest of our
2020,
group.
baby.
Yeah, you jumped in at 2020, and not only has like your card knowledge gotten better, but like also your actual collection has gotten better. So hearing that you start with your collection makes sense as why there's been like a drastic power level scaling to your decks. Because you were always like had a very strong piloting of the game, but in terms of your like card quality, it's always like it's been ramping up.
Yeah.
And it kind of got to a point where, like, I have extra copies of strong cards because starting with my collection, like, a lot of those copies end up in decks at first. And then either they don't synergize quite as well, or, like, I kind of got tired of just having them in decks. Like,
For sure.
Smothering Tide, strong card. Smothering Tide, boring card. It's very good. Don't get me wrong. But, like, it doesn't have to go in everything.
Right.
And sometimes, like, would it be good in this deck? Absolutely. But playing it it doesn't spark joy.
Yeah.
You know? Like, sometimes it's just like, it's a Smothering Tide, and, like, I would rather play something else that's just, like, a little bit more shitty. A little bit more flavorful.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not nearly as good of a card, but it's a little bit funnier.
But also
It's a little
sometimes
bit
more
of a good time.
synergistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like, what Smothering Tide doesn't synergize with a whole lot. It's just mana.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you would say. Yeah, cool. All right, Ryan, what about
Yeah,
you?
so how I build a deck, it's pretty similar to Alex, that I just, from my mighty binder, when I pick my commander, I immediately looked at let's look at that color, see what cards would go in, and I'm like, ooh, I pick this card, and this card, and this card comes out of it, and then I have 47 cards sitting on my desk, and I'm like, cool, that's it, that's as far as I got. So then I go to my online resources like EDH and I look at Scryfall for Falco Spara, which is the most recent deck I built. I just looked at cards that double counters, cards that put counters on things. I look for non+1/+1s. So Reach, Death Touch, Flying, First Strike. There's a lot of Planeswalkers that just put random keyword counters on decks. So I put 4 or 5 Planeswalkers in the deck. So
You do love them playing.
Another Ryan staple.
love Planeswalkers. So just putting those cards in the deck, I feel like it's my signature of putting odd cards that synergize well with one another. Who else is running 5 Planeswalkers in a non-Super Friends deck, you know?
Not me.
Yeah, it's got the Ryan stamp.
Yeah, it's got my stamp. It's got that feel, especially for me, it's older foils. That's how I look to build a deck. 7th edition foils, definitely a weakness of mine. Granted, they are expensive, but I gotta put at least a 7th edition foil in every deck. So just going through that. And then when I'm building the deck, I kind of look to see what kind of oddball, not combos, but high synergy pieces can go into a deck. Kind of not really solitaire type pieces, but like one step away from being like too scary.
Yeah.
You know? When you put like a doubling season down and a Fathom Mage and you put like 4 counters on it and you draw 4 cards, it's like, ooh, that's a problem, but that like that gets the brain juices flowing, you know what I mean? And it's like putting like little like high synergy effects like that in a deck is very good. Like with Elishnorn, like the Panharmomicon, you play a Spirited Companion, draw 2 cards, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
You know,
For sure.
Putting like just like high synergy pieces is what I look for. Granted, that's what every deck looks for, but I kind of like I synergize max with things like that. So
Yeah. So I'll go next. So the kind of piggybacking off of that, I think like synergy is where I start, and it's where I like to finish. Like, and I think that's why that's why I end up in a place where I build a lot of landfall, I build a lot of card draw. It's because like I can make sure that every piece of my deck is going towards this theme. Like I like every card saying draw a card if that's what my commander wants me to do. Or if it's a kindred deck, like I want all of my card draw to be zombies.
Yes.
I want all my
Yes.
destruction. Yeah.
yes,
Like not necessarily
Love
for
kindred
theme.
decks.
I think I might be like just broaching that evolution. Like, you know, in your Ball Lord of Murder deck, you run murder. It's objectively worse card than a lot of other targeted removals, but it's just a fun theme card. I don't have anything like that. It's usually the rules text that I synergize with. I think eventually I'll get to that level.
Sure.
Mine's all themed. The deck sucks, but it's on theme.
yeah.
And I think that's why I don't have as many lists or even like paper decks. Is because I often get frustrated with that process. It's like, okay, well, I can't find out how to ramp with, you know, zombies, right?
Sure.
You know, like I have to put in mana
Armillary
rocks,
Sphere.
and I don't like it as much, right?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
sometimes that, like Giada almost didn't even happen, right?
Oh, yeah,
there's so
really?
many angels, and I was like, oh, I just have to put in these generic good card draw white effects.
How many solemn simulacrums are you on? You know what I mean?
Exactly. But then I figured out that I can, you know, run a bunch of equipment related card draw, and that kind of got that like angel with a sword is cool, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Angel with the sword is cool.
The,
You know,
the
they're
monkey,
flying-
the neuron activation. you know?
Yeah.
exactly. Right. They have flying. It like thematically works, and it also in a rules text way is a cool interaction.
Yeah.
So I think that's like the big thing. I mean, everyone builds off of synergy, just like you said. Like,
Yeah.
if you're building a deck, usually it goes together.
Yeah, but I
hopefully.
sometimes cram too much synergy and forget like ramp pieces. You know what I mean?
You gotta eat your vegetables.
Bro said, my list is 100 cards. I forgot to include lands.
Yeah, sometimes.
But I'll always leave spot for a spot or two for the wacky cards of this
Yeah.
format. Things like Share the Spoils. That just like everyone groans, but it's like, okay, well, this is a different game now.
Yeah.
Like, if I play a
Yeah.
card and it's a different game, I'm like, yes, this is cool.
That's the
You're in a
owl,
little
that's the
gimmicks,
owl,
yeah.
that's the owl stamp of approval. It's like, can
Exactly.
I make the gameplay flip on its head?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Can I make it wacky? Can I make it memorable? So that's how I build the 99. And honestly, I would say I build a lot of lists. It's really this point where I can't get the vibe, the synergy that I want, that it like dies.
Got it.
Or you just buy the secret layer commander decks.
There we go. Yeah.
Those are
built
gas
for you.
though. Those are gas though.
Done.
That being said, building a pre-built pre-con like takes all that stress away, and it's just like I can show up and it's a new experience.
Yeah.
I get my little chocolate bar of a pre-con.
I get to eat my little piece of salty popcorn.
And then I won't play it ever again. But you know, that's it. Yeah.
Sidar Jabari.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Calls out, oh, convoke spells are bad. Like, no, it's an unupgraded precon now. It's just unupgraded. You're fine.
Convoke spells are overcosted.
Yes.
They have to be. They're free.
But they're so cool. All right,
Yeah.
Jake, how do you build your decks?
Oh boy. So after I've gone through the arduous journey of picking a commander, assembling the 99 starts with the veggies because I hate doing that. So I'll put in the ramp, the removal, the board wipes, a little bit of the card draw. Recently, I've been trying to only fill those categories up to half before moving on. So I'll put in like the generic ramp pieces and then I'll circle back later after I filled out the rest of the deck for a little bit of synergistic ramp. I think that's been an improvement on the process, honestly. But after all the veggies are done, I put in the pet cards and they stay there forever. Like in the Landfall deck, Life from the Loam might have been the first card in the 99.
Yeah.
I want this card there. But for me, I think the goal is always to get the deck to 100 first. As a functional piece, like a machine that I can tinker with, because after it's done, I love like pulling single cards out and tinkering and comparing 1-to-1 as opposed to like this deck needs 8 card draw spells. Let me pick all 8 of them at once. I want to say, hey, at 3 mana, is this card draw spell better than this card draw spell? Like that's what I really enjoy. So getting the list to 100 or getting it to 102 and making a couple of cuts is really where I enjoy being. And that process can also take a long time, but it similar to you where you can start with like 300, I'll do like 100 main and then 50 in the considering, and I'll work through the considering board for a couple of days.
I get to 100 and chip it.
Bo gets to 100 in the cart.
Yeah. And he's
Well,
like,
that's, you just built a list
Before
making
I
the
bought
list.
I bought cards before making the list. Before writing
my
the
God.
list. Before writing the list down.
That's insane.
Yeah.
yeah, that is insane.
It was majority lands.
Sure.
Fair.
But like,
But yeah, no, for me, it's, I want my pet cards. I want to build synergy around the pet cards. And then, after it's to 100, I'll work it to something that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate tinkering. I don't do it.
Yeah, I don't know how,
it.
how
I
you
do
like
it
that.
too much. I have to constantly rework decks because I've tinkered too much. If you replace 2 cards here and there, sometimes the whole deck's theme is thrown off and the deck doesn't work anymore.
Just a different deck.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is just a different
It's
deck.
like the ship of Theseus.
Yes.
It's like, is
I
this still
I
it?
usually just tinker when a new set comes out. I'm like, are there any
Yeah.
new toys?
Yeah.
No? All right, wait for the next one.
Yeah.
No, I'm like, it's an art piece,
And there's
I
like
painted
there's
it.
like
It's a
there's
snapshot
hung
in
it up.
time.
Yeah, exactly.
and there's like there's merit to that because you can be like, oh, I remember when I put this card in. You're shuffling through. It's like, oh yeah, I remember when I opened that card. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, Locust God was the first deck I built from scratch that wasn't like a pre-con. And it still has like Sky Diamond in it, Fire Diamond.
Yeah, baby.
Yes.
Back then that's what a lot of people
Yeah,
were.
that's
those
what
were
came
the
out,
premium mana rocks.
Yep.
Well,
And I smile every
do
time.
you still build from a template?
I haven't done that in a long time. But
Because I was going to say, for a while you had like an Excel
Yeah.
template that was like, this is how many pieces of this that I
Yeah.
need. It kind of gets a list going.
the template still exists, and I only use it if I need to like rework a deck because I've tinkered too much. It's like I'll bring it back down to a template because that's where it started, and be like, I'll fill in all the categories. Like, oh man, I've got 10 pieces of ramp and no card draw. How did that happen?
Have I lost the plot?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think that's kind of a lot of like Magic players' journey is like you got to learn the fundamentals. You use templates, 10 pieces of removal, 10 pieces of card draw, but then eventually you have
then you
a
just
feel
then
for
you just
like
vibe with it.
because different decks need different things, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
as you become more experienced with the game, you kind of know it's more.
And some decks don't even offer you all of that. You know what I mean? Some decks are dog water at targeted removal. Some colors are too good at targeted removal. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Well, and some commanders provide it for you.
Yeah.
And like, if your commander provides you ramp, how much ramp do you really need in the deck?
Exactly.
Considering like your commander is always kind of at the ready,
But that's like-
aside from Oubliette or something.
Yeah, that's like the freestyle, which
Yeah.
I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So our last question that we want to cover is how do you have fun with it?
How do I have fun playing Magic?
It's like, how do you have fun with the deck you've built? Is there like a goal? Do you have like, I need to cast mechanized production on my tumble magnet? You know what I mean? Do I need to like, get the combo kill? Do I need to like go infinite?
Sure.
What gets you there? What makes you think at the end of the game or at the end of the night and be like, yeah. I did it.
So I think it's interesting because when I first started playing Magic, a lot of it was like the competitive energy in me. Like my goal was to win the game. My goal still is to win the game. I'm going to make plays to win the game. But that I don't necessarily only have fun if I win the game.
Yeah.
I think I've actually ventured pretty far from that, in that most games I'm not winning, despite what I think the record on camera is. Most games I'm not winning, and I think at one point my win percentage was like 9. But I've kind of come to a point where I like to do kind of silly things in Magic. Kind of slogans become we ball. Like I will do the funny thing just because it's funny. A lot of times I like to cast big creatures. Personal pet deck being Gishath, which is a 100% Kindred Dinosaurs deck. There is no creature in the deck that is not a dinosaur. It's just fun to play out big creatures. It's fun to make the big play. Very Timmy?
Yeah,
Is the right one? Very
Timmy.
very Timmy to just play the big things, to cast the big spells. And like some of my decks have side quests, Carter being one of them. It has the One Ring and Mount Doom, and it would be sick if Carter won the game, but it would be so much sicker if I could sacrifice the One Ring to Mount Doom.
True.
And like at one point, the side quest in Carter was I bought a Badlands at MagicCon and I want to play Badlands. And we did that, and now I'm trying to throw the One Ring into Mount Doom, and if I win the game and get to do it, sick. If I lose the game and get to do it, sick. If I don't win the game and don't get to do it, sick. The goal,
Try again next time. Yeah.
the goal is to have fun playing Magic with my friends, and kind of Al with gimmicks. Like I want to play a game of Magic that we've never played before.
Yeah.
And just that new experience is the goal. And that's like, I play a lot of League of Legends. Don't play League of Legends.
That's good advice. Listen to that.
League is a unique experience every time. And I think that's kind of what I look for in a game of Magic the Gathering, which is part of what draws me to Commander, because it's a very non-repetitive format.
Yeah.
And so the goal is, if I can have a new experience playing Magic, like that would be sick.
Yeah, there's a lot of merit to that, putting in like little side quests and little
Yeah.
personal
Just 'cause-
like check marks into your deck.
And it's a fun way to win the game without winning the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. You like got your participation, like have fun,
I did this thing.
It's like, I got comboed out turn 5, but at least I did it.
I went infinite with mana. I didn't do anything with that mana, but
We did it.
we went infinite.
yeah.
Check out the episode here.
Yeah.
All that green and nothing to do with it.
Spoiler alert, I did not win.
Yeah, as for me, in terms of like how I have fun, it's kind of like, did I play the foil card I just put in the deck? Did I draw the nut at the right time? Did I pull off the combo? I think that's how I like have the most fun. It's like, did I pull off the combo? Especially because I have like Yawgmoth and Emery and those kind of cards that have like 2, 3, 4 piece card combos. It's like, okay, is the combo available to me? Is it gone? How do I like pick myself back up, and how do I keep going?
Yeah.
Having a evolving game plan on the fly, I think, is how I like to have fun. Having multiple game plans, having like, okay, this like Solemnity's in play with my counters deck. How do I win now? You know what I mean? And having a deck that can afford me that kind of flexibility is how I like to have fun. It's like solving the puzzle. You know what I mean? When my back's against the wall in the game.
Yeah. That's cool. And I think I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Like I really like to like throw all the puzzle pieces on the board and like figure out how I put them together.
Yeah. But also just like sometimes just playing a cool foil. That's really cool. And
Playing that card you just added to the deck, you're like,
yeah.
I put this in here yesterday, and now I get to play it today.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah, that sort of thing is just so cool. And like, yeah, figuring out the puzzle pieces and all that, that's like how I have fun, you know what I mean? That's what sparks the joy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like your Emery deck, right? It's like a combo deck.
Yep.
Where you mill, you find the pieces you like, but you also have Marinar, and those are like so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of how they approach the game, but I think like they are the cross section of your style in my mind.
Yeah, like figuring out like, okay, I'm against like a pyroclasm deck. How does Maronar do it? It's almost impossible.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Almost,
Rats don't get
almost
there.
impossible. Rats don't get there against pyroclasm decks. But just like you know, being fast, having the deck do its thing. Everyone says like in Commander, oh, let me do the thing. Doing the thing wins you the game. So maybe your opponents don't want you to do the thing, but like when you get there, oh yeah, you got there. You know.
Yeah, the little hamster in the brain.
Yeah, the hamster running on his wheel is like, let's go.
That's a very important take. That like we all want to do the thing, but generally doing the thing wins you the game. So like you're not always gonna get to do the thing.
Yeah, so you just gotta temper the expectation.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in the way that I have fun with the game itself is there's actually kind of a couple of moving parts. I think when I walk home or when I drive home or, you know, walk upstairs
home, you go
after, after a
Bro
game.
lives here.
Yeah, he knows he lives here.
The thing that like I really take away and is like this was a fun game is really like how much laughs and smiles we all had. I know that's
that's good.
cheesy as hell, but it's like it's true. Like if there was like too much
friends
salt,
we made along the
or if
way.
there was like too many like heavy like feels bad moments or altercations like in a
happen,
game,
you know?
which
Yeah.
it never are too serious. But
Right,
it's just
yeah.
like like if someone was bummed, then I'm probably bummed. Like I think you said it earlier. Like if I'm winning and no one's happy, then I'm also not happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's a big thing for me. But like, and this is along the same lines. Is like I feel like the game isn't down here, it's like up here, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone, and I like the chatter, I like the banter, I like politics, even though I don't really love that term because it's a little shady.
Yeah.
It's a little icky.
I like making deals not because it like helps me win, but because it's just fun to be like, oh, we're gonna team up in this scenario, and then you're gonna stab me in the back.
It's
or
the only
whatever.
format that allows you to do that. It's like
We're
one of the-
boys, right?
Yeah, we're
It's
boys.
the only card game that allows you to do that. You know what I mean? It's the only format
Yeah.
within the sea of card games that allows you to do that. you know?
Exactly. And it's a casual format too. So like just like you said about winning, that's like the goal, but it's not how I have fun.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
in our most recent gameplay, I Talon Gates of Madarad ruined your play, and you told me in between cuts that like if I didn't do that, you were gonna take control.
Yeah, I was gonna cast Worst Fears
Yep.
on Jake and do some infinite combo shenanigans to hopefully win the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was just like, that was such a more interesting and unique play pattern that I wish I didn't do my thing.
Yeah, but like how would you have
ultimately-
known that? So
Yeah.
it's definitely like.
But if he played telepathy, then he could have known that.
my man's still on telepathy.
Yikes.
So yeah, that's kind of my approach to it. And then I think like as a table, before we jumped over to Jake, as like a table, we have things that we all avoid in that vein, right? Like in order to make sure that like
Yeah.
no one's getting like poo-pooed on like too much. I think a good example of that is effects that are like Noxious Ghoul or
Archfiend of Ifnir.
Archfiend of
Ifnir, yeah.
Ishfnir,
Yeah.
where it has just
Cockrill.
too many -1/-1 counters that ends up in a perpetual board clear.
A lock.
That's, a long
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
It's very one-sided. There's not a lot of back and forth. It's just like just not fun. And if you're a more competitive player, you might be like, oh,
Scrub. Get good.
yeah,
you know?
you can grow up, but it's just like, I come here and I play with you guys. I want to see your
there-
decks do stuff too.
there's three
Hopefully
other-
not win, but
There's three other bleeding hearts at the table.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Consider the opponent.
Wait,
you know,
my heart's bleeding?
Consider the opponent. You know.
Should have blood in it at least.
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, we play counter spells. We play like light stacks. Like
Yeah, mana drain. There's a force of will flung in a blue moon.
Yeah.
But like we still
Fierce Guardianship.
we still come back to the table. You know what I mean?
yeah, but we're not like heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you have fun?
Oh boy, yeah. I'm gonna retread a bunch of stuff that's already been said because believe it or not a ton of ways to have fun in Magic. Just kidding. I also really enjoy the side quest thing. I think putting little side activities in your deck that might happen is really fun. I know in the Martyr Humans list I have, summoning Ormondal is pretty cool.
Ooh,
yeah, like
yeah.
flipping Westvale Abbey, that feels like, all right, I won the game, even though I might die.
Do what you must.
Though if I did flip an Ormondal, he's got a lot of stats, so maybe I'm not gonna die. I also like, making the Dark Depths token, or in a landfall deck, just seeing Field of the Dead hit the table. Like that's kind of all it takes. And I think as long as at the end of the game I had some agency in how my deck performed, that's all that matters. I think if I didn't have a good time at the end of the game, it's like nothing to do with you guys, unless one of you guys is reanimating Fleshbag Marauder every single turn. Then I might be a little upset, but no, I think if I'm like bummed at the end of the game, I'm bummed at my deck because it didn't do the thing that I wanted it to do. Like it didn't give me the agency to kind of determine my own fate. That part's kind of important to me. It's like, did I do the thing? No. Did I try? Yeah. All right, then we're good.
Yeah, and I think a lot of like Commander players need to like have that conversation with themselves. It's
For
like,
sure.
am I upset that my opponent, force of willed me, or am I upset that I didn't put X and Y in my deck, or or did I reflect on my own gameplay? You know what I mean?
It's like, oh man, am I playing a counters deck and I lost to a turn 2 Solemnity because I didn't put any enchantment removal in my deck?
You got to do something. You know what I mean?
Like I don't think that you can be mad at your opponents for that one.
Yeah.
I think that's something that it took me almost like an embarrassing long time to like recognize, is that like sometimes I would feel bad about games and be like, oh, it's because like my thing got blown up or my thing got counterspelled. Like at the end of the day, like those are cards in Magic. Like
Yeah.
they will ban cards in Magic, but Counterspell will always exist.
Yeah, they're not banning that one.
Beast Within will always exist.
For sure.
Doomblade will always
They
exist.
ban Counterspell before Mana Drain. That's insane.
Like,
Or Fierce Guardianship, yeah.
there will always
Force
be
Will.
interaction and removal, and no matter how well you build your deck, there will always be a way for someone to interact with it.
Yes.
And
You'll always
kind
get
of-
got.
Yeah,
always
the
get
joy of Magic should not come from just your deck doing exactly what you want it to do every time. Like at the end of the day, yes, we do all put cards in our deck because we want to play them, but the joy of Magic should come from playing the game.
Yeah.
And like at this point, like I think there are certain joys to seeing my stuff get blown up and like my stuff get countered. Like you thought my spell was important enough to counter it? Oh my gosh, thank you.
Masochism
I'm sitting
take.
here looking at I'm sitting here looking at 6 lands in this piece of shit, but thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Something that I think that's interesting that I think we have enough time to talk about, specifically with you, Jake, is that before, like early on, you were building the most powerful commanders in like the best, most low to the ground way. I'm thinking Corvold. Oh, yeah. I'm thinking Yuriko. Yeah. So, and you've undergone kind of like a big shift in the way you approach deck building and the way you approach the game, and I think it's worthwhile to like bring attention to and kind of talk about.
Yeah, if you had asked me this question 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said the most important thing to me in the zone, cheap commander. I want to be on board turn 2, maybe turn 3. Yeah. That's the important part. And then card draw probably. And Corvold does say draw a card on it for taking basic game actions, so it's pretty good.
It says your other favorite word, sacrifice.
It sure does. And Dragon, it says that one as well.
And Jund,
Jund them out.
No, yeah, I think my journey with picking commanders has grown a lot with my card knowledge and like what I find to be fun at the table. Like Corvold, boy, was it fun to sacrifice Squee the Immortal to Food Chain the first 2 times. After that, though, it's kind of like, ew. Like, how many times can I abuse Dockside and still have fun with it?
Not anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
0 now.
Then it got banned. And it was like, whew, goodbye. And I think that, finding 99s that I like and finding mechanics that I latch onto and then picking the best commander for that definitely helped. But I think, detaching the fun from the win, totally.
Yeah.
The linchpin of that transformation.
That's huge, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Something else that I find kind of interesting that I thought about early on in this conversation was when do you build your land base when you build a deck? Do you build it first? Do you build it last after you see how many pips you have? Like, what's the approach?
I see how many lands I own that are in the color combination first.
That helps. Yeah.
And then I look, and then I get like, you know, the non-basics. I get like, if I'm building 3-color, I get like the Triome if I own it. I get like, the check lands and the shock lands and like maybe 1 or 2 fetches if, hopefully I get a fetch or 2. And then I start building the deck, and then when I have like a good majority of cards, I wouldn't say all 100, then I look at the pips. I'm like, ooh, 3 blue pips, 4 green pips. Maybe I don't need those cards, you know?
Yeah.
Cryptic Command and Gigantosaurus, I see.
Ooh.
And then I go back and I'm like, maybe I don't need those cards, or maybe I only need one of the cards. So I think building the land base as I go is how I usually do it.
I'm almost the opposite. I do it at the beginning and at the very end. So
Yeah,
when I create a list, the first thing I do is I add the commander because you're required to when you start a Mox Field list. And then I immediately add, sometimes they aren't even lands in the color type, but I'll add 36 swamps. And just that way when I'm putting together a list, I have lands kind of allotted.
Yeah.
So
And your
that like
total
I
number.
know I can find 63 other cards, not counting the commander, so that I get to 100, and then I'll kind of fill out, okay, now I need a command tower. Will my commander get removed a lot? Okay, now I need a command beacon, and kind of fill it out that way. And then find the lands for it, and then that's kind of the last step to the cards I have. And then if it is a multicolor deck, I look at, okay, now where do I need to be pips wise to kind of even it out? And with that, I do the math and like, okay, I have exactly this many white pips, exactly this many blue pips, exactly this many green
Mine's
pips.
off vibes.
And then, no, mine is absolutely mathematically like, this is how many of these pips I should be able to get to.
Bro, he's on that math
then-
grind, bro. I'm on the vibe grind. I'm like, yeah, that looks like a lot of white pips. Yeah, maybe an extra planes.
I live the throw shit at the wall and see if it sticks, but that is mathematical shit I have thrown at the wall.
Oh my god.
It is weighted. I know the consistency of my fecal matter.
So what I've learned is we need to do a land-based episode.
Yeah.
Because I am clinically insane.
What?
Yeah.
I start my list with the commander because you're required to on Moxfield.
Sure.
And then I add,
I don't build on Mox. This is weird.
I go to
This man
EDH
builds on
Trek.
Scryfield.
Skyfall.
Scryfield, baby.
Skyfall. Building on
He's
Skyfall
in
isn't bad.
Starfield. He's in space.
Whoa.
Bro builds on Star Fox.
Building on Skyfall isn't
He
bad.
builds on his N64.
It's where I look at the cards. Why wouldn't I build the deck there?
It does.
Yeah.
I didn't even
okay.
know you could.
So I pick the commander, and then I add 37 lands. I go on EDH Rec, I look at the mana lands, and I find every single dual land or in my colors
Oh my
that
goodness.
enters untapped. And I make that as even as possible with my colors. And then if I run out of untapped duels, then I fill in the rest with basics. Then I'll look
goodness.
at utility lands, and then I'll replace the basics with utility lands if I need them.
What about conditional untaps? What about fast lands? Do those
Yeah.
count?
I don't run fast lands, but I do run slow lands because they're almost guaranteed. So the Midnight Hunt ones, like I'll run those.
Yeah.
So 2 or
They are
more
almost
lands,
guaranteed.
not so 2 or more, not 2 or less.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't be keeping one land hands.
Exactly.
That's the opposite. Jake exclusively runs MDFCs
true.
and Taplin.
It's true.
And that's literally that's all. Like I'm done with my mana base from that point. And
Really?
I can literally probably count on the one hand how many times I've had mana problems. I really don't have a problem with pips.
Crazy.
But what about like weirdo utility land, like nesting grounds? You know what I mean? Like what about
Yeah.
like Alchemist's Refuge and like weirdo lands?
That'll
like
replace one of the extra basics. I
Oh,
put
so
in.
you go
my
back?
God.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's phase 1 is adding the basics. Then phase 2.
I thought the
look
base.
at
I thought the land
utilities.
was like locked. You're like not changing it. We're good. We ship it, and then we just find a bunch.
Before
of
I
cards.
add the rest of the 99, yeah. Like lands and commander are done. Ship it.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Yeah, and I stick to it.
I mean, yeah, I'm pretty similar. Like, if I'm building a list, for a color pair that I already have, I'm gonna go to another deck list, copy all of the lands. I've already done the work. Like, this is it. I've already built an Izzet mana base. I'm just gonna copy and paste this into the new Izzet list. Like, it works. I run like all the untapped lands that I own. And then I fill for pips after that. Like I put some fetches, some ghost quarters, you know.
Yeah.
I would say
Need some utility, but honestly lands are kind of uninspired for me. I just
My mana
do what
bases are
works.
probably the least unique thing about my decks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty similar across color pairings. Like I run a demolition field in darn near every deck because
Yeah.
like it's just good removal and it's on a land.
Yeah, in terms of inclusion, yeah, I can
Yeah.
see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got like favorites, like lands that I put in every deck that I can. Like Otawara is one. I put that in literally every blue deck if I have a copy because I think it's great. Beseiju is a little more expensive, so that one not so much.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, Ghost Quarter Demolition
Temple of
Field,
the False
Fabled
God, baby.
Passage, like some of these lands just make every single deck because I just copy and paste from things that work. It's like
Yeah.
I adjust my pips at the end for ramp if I'm in green. Like if I need a
Inflation.
lot of forests, I'll make sure there are some basic forests in there. But other than that, the basics just kind of fill out the 99.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting talk there. And, you know, if you're interested in seeing a land-based episode where we go a little bit more in depth, go ahead and leave a comment. But I think that's all for today's episode. So we are the Snapkeep crew. This is the Turn Zero podcast. Hope to catch you next time. See ya.
Bye.